two-stroke, brand new, 2026. And everything that I say really won't make any difference whether it's a 4-stroke or a 2-stroke. It's all the same thing. Before we actually go into suspension clickers and spring preload, that you want to make sure that your chassis on the bike is working correctly for the suspension that's bolted into it to work as it should. So little things like if we start at the back, you want to make sure that all your linkage at the bottom is all well greased, hasn't got play in it. The same with the shock linkage, top and bottom.
And how do you check that, Sean?
Well, this obviously you imagine has got grease already in because it's brand new. Otherwise, you would take all of this apart here, down the bottom, and pull the pins out and check that there's grease in there. And if there's not, I'd clean it out, put grease in, assemble it all. And to check if there's play, you'd have the bike off the stand like this, off the ground. And you'd pull on the back there, and oh, there's a little bit of play in it. and you'd find a bit of play in it. And then you'd have a feel about on which one it is as you've done it to find out where the play was and replace that bit. You also want to check that your chain adjusters are equal and that your wheel is in line in the back of the bike. Also your chain tension, because as that suspension compresses up, that chain will tighten. So if your chain is a bit too tight from whatever your manual says, as your wheel goes up and you hit bigger bumps, your chain may start to restrict the movement and you'll start to think that your suspension's harsh. So that's important as well. Moving to the front of the bike. So it's important to get both forks exactly the same height out the top of these triple clamps. Whether you use calipers to measure it, but you know, within literally less than half a mil ideally is what you want, quite accurate on it. Then the triple clamps, they need to be torqued to the correct torque. On this bike, it's 15 Newton meters on the bottom ones and 20 Newton meters on the top. You want to do that with a torque wrench, because if you don't and you do it too tight, as this moves up through there with the bushings inside, these over tightened can distort that tube slightly and cause stiction and excessive wearing of the bushings. Another really important part that some people might understand is, and others may not. I don't know if I can turn that bike round a little bit. Drop it. Don't worry, it will be It is on a bit of a funny angle. These two pinch bolts, when you put the front wheel in, both of these sides should be loose on the pinch bolts. You'd have put the spindle in, and then you'd have done this nut up, and you'd have done it up tight, and that pulls the spindle this way as you do that nut up. You do not want to tighten those two before tightening the actual spindle bolt, because it will pull. Let me get up there. It'll pull the forks where they should be dead in line. It'll pull the one in, and then that'll bind as well. There's a tool which I don't like using that much, but I did buy it quite a while ago. And what you do is you set it up to exactly what the gap is here, and then you put that down here and you do the same thing, and that would show that the forks are dead in line. The only reason I don't like using it that much is because it's really awkward to get in there, and you don't want to scratch the coating on those forks down there. But that would give you an idea of how sort of parallel they should be. If I may have sort of done this earlier. If I demonstrate that this is that spindle going in, and these two red bits are the bottom of the fork, there and there, as you do the bolter on the left side, this bit needs to be loose and still floating, so that as this gets pulled that way, this can move. Once you've done all of this side up, the left side, and you've bounced it up and down a bit and just got this to centre itself, which that'll do like that. Once it has centred itself, then you do those two up, and those forks will then be in line. Okay. You've then got on the top of you, so we will move now to the suspension. On the top of the forks, you've got two little bleeder air screws. Not little bleeders like your kids at home, but two little bleed air screws. And you don't want to do this while you're out riding, because they're minute, and if they come out and fall out, you'll be in trouble. But so one of those on there, we'll see if Alex's actually makes. So that didn't, that was people in the crowd.
Yeah, I thought so. Well done, Sean. You sussed it. They're not trying to throw you, are they?
So no, there's no air, but they do build up. So we're going to get Alex on the bike shortly and set the rear sag, the bike, the spring preload for Alex for his size and weight. But before that, I'll just talk you through the clickers, what they do. So yeah, this comes off then now.
Yeah. Strange enough, this year only, they decided to bolt they keep this as one panel, which you can't really get to the adjuster. So I don't know why. So we have to take it apart.
For sure, you've got to do that every lane. Setting up the suspension. Obviously, a lot of us use mooses. For the guys that aren't using it, taking their pressures up and down, does that make a big difference to
in the tyres?
Yeah,
it's a really good point, because you know your tyres and your tyre pressures are all part of your suspension as well. Most people are running mooses now, so they're stuck with whatever sort of hardness mousse they got in there. But otherwise, you know, I would kind of recommend between sort of like 7 or 8 and 10 psi roughly. I know they say 12 to 14. That's norm. You don't get that good a traction out of a tyre with 12 to 14 in sort of the terrains that we do. Unless you were heavier and it was really rocky with sharp edges and you were on tubes, then you could say, all right, run it a little bit higher, 10 to 12. You know, or if you're on adventure, I'm on about a lighter bike like this, not an adventure bike. If you're on anything much bigger, that would be different. You would run higher.
What kind of weight is that? One of the things you have to be aware of, if you're going to run pressures below road pressures, then you must have tyre clamps fitted.
Yes. Yeah. Rim locks. Yeah. So that bolt there, that's a rim lock bolt. So there's a hard piece in this tyre, in the wheel, in a hole in the tyre, and it clamps onto the bead of it. So when you're braking or accelerating, it stops the tyre spinning on the rim. Otherwise, it would rip the valve out. Quite right, Charlie.
A cunning little trick there is when you've got a valve, because you've got the tube in, the little nut or screw on the outside of the valve, wind it out to hold the valve cap, not hold the thing in. And then when the thing moves, you can see it moving, or it has moved, you'll know that the tyre clamps aren't doing their job properly. Yeah,
very true. Very true. You can also drill a very slightly bigger hole where your valve goes through, so it has a little bit more movement as well for that. It's a good point. If we go to the clickers, so this is where people get all like a bit. They never want you to fiddle with the clickers for some reason. I don't know what it is. They'll put a new exhaust on the bike. They'll do all sorts of things. But when it comes to, they got little hand clicker things here for you to do it with your hand. to make it that easy, so you don't need any tools, so you can do it as you're riding, whenever you want, you can do it. It's the easiest thing in the world. And so anyway, you know, perhaps it's because people are not sure what they're doing when they alter them. So you've got your spring in, obviously, in there, and we'll address how to set that for someone's weight in a minute. But otherwise, you've got compression adjustment to make it either feel firmer or feel softer. And so you've got the compression here on the shock. It'll always be up here. I've never known it be down the bottom on the shock. And on the bottom of the shock, you've got the rebound. So how fast or slow it comes back up. If we just talk about the compression to start with, you've got two lots. You've got slow speed compression and high speed compression. The slow speed is the one on the outside here. Normally it's done with a screwdriver. But these Huskies have been really good and done everything that you don't need tools. You can do it all by hand. So normally the one on the outside of this cluster, normally done with a screwdriver, is the slow speed compression. And what that's on about, the slow and high speed, they're not talking about how fast you're going on the bike. That's not what it means. It's how fast that shock shaft travels. So if you're going 15 mile an hour and you hit a dead square edge or slightly undercut, decent edge, and your suspension has to move really quick, you're in the high speed, even though you're only doing 15 mile an hour. The slow speed is going to affect just how sort of like firmish the bike feels in general. But you know, if you were to be landing off, not that we would do that so much in trail riding, but if you were to be landing off a jump and the suspension was to go down quite quickly, then you'd be in the high speed. It's to do with the speed of the shock shaft, not the speed of the bike. Yeah, okay. And then the rebound. So the rebound on how quick it comes back up. And people would think, well, if I control it more and more to make it stay, you know, sort of slower, then it's not going to kick me as much, and you know, I'm going to have a bit more control. That's not really the case, because you need it to rebound up to be ready for the next hit. And believe it or not, but rebound also affects compression. It makes the difference of almost like half a click of reducing compression damping. It affects it, because with the rebound, the oil has not only got to come back through to slow it on the rebound, but on the way down it also has to go through it as well. So it affects compression as well as rebound. They say you want your bike to rebound as fast as you can allow it to without it kicking you all the time. And then it's just gonna react better to stones, little edges, all things like that. It's gonna come back up. The bike's gonna feel a little bit more nimble. You know, rebound does make a big difference to how the bike feels. Sometimes the bike will be kicking a rider, and they'll think, oh, it's kicking me in the back, I need to slow that rebound down. It could be completely the opposite, and quite often is, that you need to speed it up a bit. It's kicking because it's packing down. It's not having time to come back up. So it wants to be ready for the next hit. On the fork, you have the same compression. It's not always compression at the top, but normally on these sorts of forks, when it's a white or a grey adjuster, turn adjuster, it'll be compression. And when it's a red one, it's normally rebound. I think they're on the bottom of this one, yeah. And it does the same thing as what we're saying about on this shock. The only difference is you don't have high speed compression on the fork. You only have just your normal slow speed compression. Does that make a bit of sense to people? Any questions on that?
Can you say that bit about the white one and the red one again, please?
Yeah. So
Is this a kind of universal code, white and red?
It seems to be for the white power, for like the KTM and Huskies.
Right. Okay.
I know this has got a red one on there, but that is actually for the fork preload. But in the manual, it will say that the red adjuster, and I'm pretty sure it's got a red one on the bottom of there, is for the rebound, and the white or grey is for the compression. Because sometimes where they've changed the different designs of forks over the years, they did have it at it's quite conventional to have a compression adjuster on the top of each fork and a rebound on the bottom of each fork. But they have done it over the years where they've had one fork doing the compression, another one doing the rebound. So you had two different colour ones on the top. Can get a bit confusing, which is why I made reference to the colours. So if you just really think of it as white or grey being compression, dependent on which fork you've got, and the red is the rebound, then it'll work for you. Should we move to?
There's a question over here.
Maybe question on those specifically. I've got a KTM 390 adventure bike, and I think it's got white on one side and red on the other.
Yeah, at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's where certain years they done the forks where they had the compression in the one side, adjustment, and rebound in the other.
And it controls both forks? No.
Yeah, but because the thing is all bolted in together.
So they work as a always work together.
Okay. Yeah. But that's, you're quite right. And the one should be white or grey, and the other one should be red. Yeah. So the red one will be your rebound on how quick it springs back out.
It's probably a weight saving thing, I expect.
Expense saving thing.
Yeah. You know, even frames will affect the rigidity of a motorcycle, and steel frames are inherently they got more flexing than an aluminium frame. And you know, when that Honda CRF first came out, and it was you looked at as being, you know, a really good looking bike and sort of state of the art, they only brought aluminium frames out really because it was cheaper to produce. They don't have to paint them and they don't rust. But they're inherently far more rigid, and you know, aftermarket people would even go to the engine hanger, the engine where the engine's fixed to the frame. They would come out with other versions of that with more flexing, and that flex in the frame actually made the bike feel better through the suspension. You know, there's lots of things that affect it, not just how sort of hard or soft your forks or shock are.
So on these, really important to get those two exactly the same on both sides, isn't it?
Yeah.
For that reason.
You could, if we would never be, I would never be sensitive enough to notice one click on these, very unlikely, but certain riders who are really high level, they might do, and so they might say run one clicker at 9 and another one at 10 just to get that halfway point as well, but that's not really relevant to us. But you're quite a good point that you would set, if they're both compression at the top, you set them both to the same, whatever you chose, and the same with the rebound.
I don't think anyone would know.
No, same.
I know some top riders who wouldn't have a clue.
I don't know all the audience in the room, but I would say one person you might notice in here would be Sean. And the amount of adjustment and fiddling he does.
Championship riders.
And changing clothes as he goes round.
Not a
So where would you say?
Where do you store your screwdriver normally, Sean, on your bike?
In my pocket.
In the pad at the front of the bars.
Yeah, that's where I used to on the Honda.
Yeah, so where would you say a good starting point is then with the clickers? Because I've gone through my manual before and it sort of says regular riding.
Yeah.
You know, it's got all the list of how many clicks to do.
Yeah. So on the Husky and the KTMs and that, they do like and we've got those settings that we're going to set it to in a minute. So they've got like sport. So the compression, let's just say out of 25 clicks. So everything, we'll do that now. So everything, I don't need to, I was looking for a screwdriver, I don't need it because you just use the hand. So everything with a clicker, right, is counted from all the way in. You screw it all the way in. 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that was on 15. It's 17 or 18. This is for the comfort setting.
So you say you start with it completely down?
Yeah,
completely,
yeah. You screw it all the way in, righty-tighty, as if it was the tap on your kitchen sink. You screw it in. When it stops, don't carry on and screw it up tight like you're doing up a nut. It just seats because it's literally a needle going into an orifice. I'm not going to do and of course, as you unscrew it, that's coming out and allowing more oil flow. All right. So, but if you screwed it in and then really screwed it in too tight, you could break something off inside and or damage it. So Alex is. So on the forks here, so 17 on the top, 19 for rebound on the bottom. So I've screwed that all the way in, that one. I'll do the other one in a minute. So I count out 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17.
So what's that for? Comfort setting then? Sure.
Yeah. So the sports setting was, I think, 12, and then I think it was 15 for like average, and then for the comfort setting it was 17.
So Sean, you recommend we start on comfort then? Is that a good starting point for trail riding?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Remember, that's clicks and not whole turns. Yeah? And the same on his rebound on the bottom. I won't bore you with doing that, but unless you want me to. No, it just takes time.
They're talking at the back.
Yeah.
Is it the same all the way in? But if you're doing the bottom on rebound,
yes,
it's the same as the top, all the way in and
yes,
back out.
Yes, yeah. It's the same with as well with the compression here. You go all the way in and count the clicks out. When it comes to the high speed, the bigger dial, that's done in turns, just to confuse you all. Right? So it's 2.5 turns out. So, you know, you'd look at that and go, 1 turn. That's done at 1.25. So if he'd have ridden this bike without doing anything, this bike would have been set really hard on the high speed compression. So it's meant to be 2.5. So if they're half,
and
1,
these are just the comfort
and a
numbers,
half,
or is it took into account his
2.
weight?
The clickers are just for general, not for the weight.
Right.
The spring rate, so there's a good point as well, Mark, because you want to balance your bike. You set all your clickers to what it says as a starting point. That doesn't mean that's it. You got it in the best place. It's just a starting point. But you balance the bike front to back by the spring preload with the springs, which we're going to do now with Alex on. That's how you balance the bike, and you get the back set to what it says in the manual. And again, that's only a starting point. Once you've got it there and you ride it, you might feel, I'll go through that in a minute, but if we'll get Alex and get him set up on it.
You ride that round the room all right?
We need someone to hold the front of the bike while he does.
Okay.
Are you strong enough, Rob?
Not really.
You leaving, Kent? You got enough?
Look at this, you've got the proper gear here.
Oh, look at
On the other
this.
side, Sean, it'd be better.
I know, but they can't see. I have to turn the bike
Turn it
round.
around, mate.
Should we turn it round? I'm not sure.
Sean, we know you're going to
Brand spanking new kit. Oh, I pressed the button,
The seat's off.
better off sending them away.
We see you on that, Rob. Is the bike coming?
Yeah. We have to get the settled in anyway. It's not even soft.
Doing it again, isn't it?
So we want to measure the bike with it off the ground, up like that. So this is doing your bike sag and your rider sag to see if you've got the right spring rate on the back. So this spring on, well, the standard spring on this bike is for someone who is around 12 to 13.5 stone.
That's no good. That's no good.
Sean, you need to, that's with riding kit on, isn't it?
No.
Naked in the bathroom.
No, that's without, I believe that's without riding kit. It didn't say it in the manual with riding kit.
No, it's full kit. It's meant to be full kit.
I know it is, but the manual didn't say with full kit when it said the weight.
The weight of the person.
Yeah.
So where we did, so we've changed the spring, haven't we? The standard spring.
Yeah, because Alex comes slightly, because he's tall.
He's been trying to lose some height for a while. What did it come with?
So the standard spring, there's 75 to 85 kilogram rider weight.
Yeah.
And I wrote to KTM Suspension and said, look, this is my new bike. Have you got the stats for it yet? They said, yes, we got this for the 26 model. All you give them is your weight with nothing on. And mine was somewhere between 85 and 95, which is the next spring up. So that's got the upgraded spring in. So for tonight, we wanted to get the sag right, which meant we had to buy a spring. It was 95 quid, K-Tech, but they're brilliant. You email them what you want, and they'll email you back with, this is the spring for you, with a link to their website. You click it, you buy it, they send it. It was there the next day. So it was really good.
Easy enough to change?
On this, yes. On the linkage, on this is you just drop the bottom out. So you take the linkage out, and you literally undo the bolt that the shock sits in. So there's two bolts at that point, and the spring just drops out. And then you put slide the new one up. So surprisingly, it's very easy on this. PDS, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I've not done a KTM one.
My KTM was easy.
Jake Island? Jake Island? Right, we do have a K-Tech specialist in the room. Sean's going to talk about him a bit later, but we may be running a separate session on suspension, upgrades, whys and don'ts and do's and don'ts, etc. Okay, right.
Yeah, so as well, it's a good point that this is a linkage rather than the PDS, progressive damping system. So we've got the bike off the ground, and I've set, makes it so much easier than just a tape measure. So that slides up and down there, so I've put that in, and I've gone off of that little mark there, and I've zeroed it. So now, if we
Just a point of convenience.
so I have heard some say get this from the centre bolt there to there and do the arc up, and that should be the point. I've heard others say that it should be direct, straight up like that.
I think it's as long as you use the same point.
As long as you've got the same point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's why I've gone off the lip of that. The lip of that there. Yeah.
It actually says sag on the fender. on the edge.
Yeah. It's actually in the moulded plastic.
It is, isn't it? That's a good point. I've got a nice sharp edge there, right? And I can't move left or right. It's exactly there. So if you push down on it now, Rob, and then let it come up. Push down quick and let it come up. There you go. So we're on there. We're at 35 mil of bike sag. If you lift up and let go, between the two, that's the bike upright and with the handlebars straight. So that's saying 30. So 35. Nope, that was 35 as well. So we have got 35 mil of bike sag. Let's see what it is with Alex on. Yeah, someone's going to have to hold it. And we want him in a like here's the thing, they say, like he sat back quite a way, needs to sit forward. That's good. That's good. You know, we could get him to stand up on the pegs and it might even be a bit more accurate again. Yeah, all right? Yep. So that's 150, 113, something like that, 112, 113. And the manual says like about 110. But that's just a starting point. So...
And that good enough then?
Yeah, that I wouldn't worry about that because it's just a starting point.
Is that a third of the travel?
Yes, roughly a third of the travel, yeah. Yeah. All right, Al. So he's not far off on that to start with that as a starting point. These bikes as well, what I would like to say is these bikes are race bikes. You know, if you want a trail bike, a proper trail, is like a CRFL or a DR or something like as a trail bike, and they're really, really soft, and we complain about them being too soft, and rightly so. But this is a race bike. This bike is capable of jumping over this room. That, you know, it's a really, really capable machine, and so. You know, suspension is made firmer for how fast the bike is going and how fast you're hitting things, and also the weight of a rider. So, you know, this bike is designed not just to tootle about like a CRFL. Compared, you know, this is designed to be raced hard by a pro level rider as well. So they're on the slightly firmer side of things, in my opinion. Unless you're, you know, heavier than what the spring rates say and all the rest of it. So, you know, I don't think myself, I think you get a little bit more out of the bikes for what we do and for rockier, nudgery terrain by running just a little bit extra sag because you've got less preload on the shock spring, so that it's a little bit more compliant on slower speeds. You know, and especially dependent on your weight and that, how you find with the compression and the rebound, just loosening things up a bit so that it works, and it works over the small stuff, because our speeds are relatively slow compared to what this bike was built for.
Some of us were softer just so we can touch the terrain.
Yeah. That's right.
So Alex could clearly sit on the bike with his gear on and have both feet nice and stable.
Yeah. If I was to get on that bike,
me sitting on my KTM or that bike,
Yes,
in tippy toes.
You know, that's me, that. Terrible. And I'm pretty tall.
Good for you, Sean.
Must be what his mother fed him.
The other thing to mention is, so let's say you got the back down, the sag even a little bit more, and you've got the option to drop these forks. You've got the option to bring them up in, and that'll lower the front of the bike, or slide them through, and that'll bring the front up. the bike will turn tighter if the forks are dropped up through and the front's lower, and you'll feel it to a point of where it'll kind of like knife in a little bit. It sort of turns a bit too quick, and you'll probably lose some stability at speed. Might get a little bit of head shake, and pushing them on down through so that the raises the front up a bit, gives more stability, and sort of gets the back to sit a bit more, and don't be afraid to adjust these things and find out, let alone just the clickers. You've got these other things that you can do. You've got the shock to lower that down, you've got your forks up and down, only within reason of what the marks are on there. You don't go down any further than what the marks are. Another thing I'd say is, if you've got everything set as standard and you're going out and you're trying your bike and you think to yourself, all the forks feel a bit hard, well, find out which your compression are on yours. Like we said on this one, it's the white or grey on the top, and turn them 5 clicks out, not just 1 or 2. Go enough. It wouldn't, you could do even more, but just do enough that there's no point faffing about a little bit. Oh, did it make a difference? Didn't it? Do enough to feel something. Go 5, 7 clicks out from it. Oh, are they softer or not? And if you didn't really notice too much, put them back to where they were and go 5 in.
Sean, if you do that, should you be adjusting the compression and the rebound at the same time?
Not necessarily, I don't think so. Okay. No, I would do them. You've got to do both compression at the same time. No, I wouldn't. I would eliminate, if you do too many adjustments at the same time, you lose track of what may have worked and where you were. And as long as I've done it myself, as you really know. I'm riding along and I can adjust mine with a hand thing on the top. So I adjust it, and I think I've still got track of where it is. I think I know where I am. I'm 17 out, and then I stop and I'll check and I screw it in or something, and I'm like about 7. So I've messed something up on that ride, but it's fine because I just screw all the way back in. I know where the standard setting on mine is at 13. I come back out to 13 and I'm back at my point again. It's not the old bugger I've lost it and I don't know what to do now.
That's why we make you ride in mittens.
You just go all the way in and count back out to your standard place.
How many people change the front springs? When would it be handy to do that?
Well, because Alex is a bit taller and we've had to do the back, it is possible that he may need the springs in the front. But it's a brand new bike and it's better to ride it and see and everything first. If even in one way, changing that spring might have been a bit preemptive, and it might have been better in hindsight to just ride the bike as it was first designed, and then go from there. So you got a feel of a platform of what you're moving from.
They do soften up a bit, don't they, from brand new?
That's a good point. Definitely. They say about 10 hours, but I'm sure my beta took longer than that. Yeah, definitely. It's the frame and everything. It all takes a bit of just loosening up. It does make a difference. So, unfortunately, you get a brand new bike and think that thing's going to feel amazing. Well, it'll be 10 hours or so before it does, probably.
The main reasons, one of the reasons for changing the spring for Alex and myself is that if we on the bike you have a spring too soft, it moves it down in the range of where the suspension is working correctly.
Yeah.
So by having a stiff spring, you're putting it back into, somebody said about, is it in the 3rd range?
Yes. Yeah.
On the Hondas, on my trip, they gave me box standard TRF, standard spring, set on softest setting. I sat on it and just went plonk. And I was just getting smashed in the ass the whole time.
Yeah.
Because there's no suspension travel.
Yeah,
so
quite right.
One of the reasons is to think about having a spring just to keep it in the right range.
Exactly. And for me, you see, I would have to have a lighter spring.
Because you're not as tall.
I'm not exactly not at all.
He's all muscle. He's light and muscle.
I mean, the crux is that you want to be using all of the cover, ideally, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, and that's why it's got these red rings on the fork there as well.
Is that standard on them now?
Yeah,
Producers
yeah.
Stolen from the mountain bike world, that is right.
Yeah, and you can put a zip tie on there. Zip tie and pull it up, and that will show you the furthest part. You know, put it on both so that you know if they're both doing the same.
You want it, don't you, on a good ride with varied terrain, you want to be using most of your
Yeah, yeah. I think with what we do, because we very rarely get any higher than that. You know, I think you want, if you can, have 2 inches or so left at the bottom there for if you know, we're not hitting anything mega hard, and if you did hit that one thing a bit harder at a bit of speed, at least you've got a little bit of give there. Another little thing that they say is like the steering stem. Like if your handlebars flop too easy from one side to another, they're not. That's not really loose, but it's called a poor man's steering stabilizer, and you basically tighten the headset up just slightly. That you do that, and it doesn't really carry on. But it's a fine line. They're not bad, but that'll also help keep it a bit straighter through stony, rough stuff and things like that. If it's really, that's not really loose, it's just sort of in between. But if it was looser than that, and I've had mine before now, where you know, really back and forth quite easy, you know, it's not really, that can get a bit shaky. And if you were to do that, because you're basically screwing that down to tighten up the headset, you've got to loosen off one of these, this here or that there, because that gap is going to change only by minute amount. You've got to release the tension through those.
What about fork servicing then, John? So he's taken it out, he's battered it about servicing on the forks.
Yeah, you've got obviously the oil in there is getting contaminated all as it's being used, and it gets a hard life in there. There's not a great deal of it, and you've also got copper and Teflon bushings in there that wear out, and you know, that's where Jake Ireland from Sprung Suspension, that's where he'd come in, and you could take your stuff to him and he can completely service the suspension. If you wanted stuff revalved, like for me, because I'm lighter, this bike would probably, even the valving, even if I changed the springs, the valving would probably still be a little bit too stiff for me. So he could adjust things like that and make it more compliant to my weight. Same thing if you're heavier, you know.
You can adjust it with the viscosity of the oil actually a little bit.
You can. It's cheap. It's not the same, because you're also affecting rebound as well as compression in that viscosity.
You overcome the viscosity change quite quickly once the oil is under a lot of pressure. So the viscosity change will change in low speed quite a lot, or an amount. But once you get to a higher shaft speed, because it's based on oil pressure at that point, the viscosity means virtually nothing.
Because it'll move the shims and just push them out of the way. Yeah. And you know, doing all of this, you know, setting your forks in exactly the right height, getting all your clickers set right, making sure that this isn't binding in the front, all your linkage, everything like that. You know, if you've got a bike that hadn't had the suspension serviced in a few years, you know, chances are you're not really getting out of it what you thought you were. And you know, you'd be surprised how good these bikes are just through being set up correctly, nothing being over-torqued, things being set up right, with fresh, good suspension, with new bushings and things like that. You'll have a very good bike then, really.
What comment would you make, Sean, to somebody buying a second-hand bike, perhaps 2019, 2020, they don't really know the history of?
You never know what someone's done, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I've known a bike get sold with different forks on than what it were original on the bike, so no one would have known that when they bought it. You know, it could be meant to have 4.0 fork springs in say, or 4.2 in a bike like this. It might have come off a 450 and it's got 4.8s in it, you know, with different valving and everything, and those forks are on it, even though they're the same looking at the outside. You haven't got not a clue what anyone's done.
What do you mean by 4.2, 4.8?
So that would be the rating of the spring. So a 4.2 would be a softer spring than a 4.8.
Right. Right.
Is there a way of telling that?
They get a part.
On the back, it's normally written. There is a spring measuring machine to actually that someone like Jake would have.
A good suspension centre will have a spring rate tester.
Yeah.
It's like once you've got the spring in your hand, a 30-second jump to see what the spring rate is. Like every good centre should have a tester.
Yeah, and you could even, I think, if you could do the old means, couldn't you, Paul, with like say it was X amount of pounds per inch or millimetre, you can put that weight on there and measure how much it actually compresses to work it out that way as well, like the old conventional way.
I tried that one, Sean, it wasn't very easy.
You got to take him out the bike.
I did take
You got to put the water in a container.
You haven't covered the is it called the preload collar on top of the
Yeah.
suspension unit? People mess with that to lower the back and all sorts, and what does that do?
Yeah, so Alex's, the preload, this bike manual is really good because what it's come with, it actually tells us in the manual, is for this bike to be off its own weight, 35 to 40 mil of sag, that's just dropped. There's 7 mil of preload on that spring. And it's a really good point because spring preload, I feel, you know, you could get a heavier rider. He gets on that bike, and it's sagged right down 120, 130 with the rider on it. So we start winding that spring on and putting more load on that spring, more preload on it. Well, it should only really be, I think, from around sort of like minimum of 4 mil up to like a maximum of 10 to 12. Anything beyond that, say like the 10 to 12, you know, they'll be screwing on that preload, and then what will happen is because of the weight of the rider, well, the bike hadn't changed. When they take the bike off the stand, it doesn't drop at all because the spring's so wound up like that, then the bike's not going to work right. They should have gone to a higher rate spring with the right amount of preload.
If they wind the other way to drop the back of the bike,
undo it.
What's the effect of that then?
Undoing it, and you're going to lower it down, and then
losing travel.
You're losing a little bit of travel. You're going to touch the floor a bit easier if you're shorter. It's, in my opinion, for really slow stuff that say down like the Y Valley and stuff like that, where you've got, you know, lots of really snotty first gear, low climbs, and it tracks the floor better with lesser preload on, in my opinion. But then when you get to normal, a bit faster stuff and things like that, and you're hitting things where you're in like third gear, you might find that it starts to feel a bit harsh. It's because as well, that's another good point, is, you know, suspension is a forever needing adjusted thing really for different terrains and different speeds. You know, it's not that you can get the bike to work fantastic in every area. You know,
if you drop the back, you roll to the rake, can't you, on the front? So you
Yeah.
really need to bring the forks up through as well.
Yeah, and I've got a lowering link on mine, and there, you know, people say you shouldn't put a lowering link. That's true, and that's fair enough, because where on the linkage down there, the linkage, as the suspension's up in the air, that linkage is giving like less force on it, so the suspension moves over smaller bumps better. the further it comes down through the stroke, the linkage stiffens things up. And so if you put a lowering link, you've brought it down a bit further and you're in a slightly firmer part of the linkage. True, but I can touch the floor then, I don't fall off as much. And I, you know, it's better to have the shock shortened internally that someone like Jake can do. That's the correct way to do it. But there is, you either do a lowering, you either take the preload off the spring and drop the back down, and then it can get a bit floppy. You either do the lowering link like I've done, or you give it to Jake or someone, a suspension specialist, where they take the whole shock apart and it's done internally with a restrictor thing in there. Where I've lowered my back 30mm with a lowering link, Jake, I'd like your input on this one. I wouldn't think, and I don't think that you then lower the front 30mm by sliding the fork up. I've done it like literally half to 2/3 of what I've taken the back down. It's not relevant. Is that correct?
Yeah, because the percentage of travel is different.
And
dynamically, once you're on the bike, because your weight is more over the back, it's less of an overall change on the front.
Right.
We would expect them to be pushed through a bit.
Yeah.
And there are lowering spring options for forks for people who are really little.
Yeah.
But I think we're probably a similar size and we're in a similar place from what you've just said.
Yeah.
On our bike.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're going to drop the back 30mm through a lowering link, you don't slide the forks up 30mm thinking you're going to balance the bike. Slide the forks up 10 to 15mm.
In how the bike's sitting.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, because the forks, you got rail and trail, rake and trail, haven't you?
Yeah.
With the forks because they're on an angle. So sliding those up 30mm has a massive effect
Right.
compared to the back. So then they're not relevant in.
But when you just dropped it down on the back, so you measure from there to there.
Yeah.
And then you could just measure from there to there and drop that 30mm.
No, that's what we're saying. No.
It'd always be a percentage difference.
I've never read that before. That's new on me.
Yeah. Hey, you've learned something, Rob. Do you know what I mean? Never too old. Never too old.
He's not convinced. He's not convinced.
Your weight distribution is a right on the bike.
Hang on, Jake. Can you start again, please? Can you start again?
If you think of your weight distribution as a rider stood up on the bike riding along, your weight is much more over the rear than over the front. So your impact on that chassis moving along is much more on the back than the front. So that lowering link versus moving your forks through, exactly the same. My recommendation would be if you put a 30mm link on, drop your forks 10mm.
Yeah. And try it, and if you're not happy, drop it a bit more. You know, it's all yes, Mark.
There is this thing that when you're stood up on the bike in your sort of normal stood up position, because there is a sort of average stood up position anyway. If you bounce on the bike, it should go down fairly,
good point.
Fairly level. I mean, how you can tell, I don't know from being on it. Can you tell?
We'll do it, but I'll say something about that as well. The bike is cold now, right? And the back will always, when the bike's cold, the back will always move a little bit easier than the front. The reason being is...
And Sean, when you say cold, you mean the oils are cold?
Yeah.
So nothing to do with the engine, the oils are cold?
The oil's cold and the seals are cold.
Right.
Everything, not the engine. The fact the bike hasn't been ridden.
That has a factor, is it?
It has a factor.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is, on the back, for instance, the reason why, even when it's quite cold, the back will still move quite a bit when you push on it, is the shock shaft is only like 14mm or whatever. It's a small shock shaft in there. So the seal around that doesn't create a lot of friction and drag. And you've got a lot of leverage and linkage and everything to help move that. On the forks, in comparison to the rear shock, on the forks you've got like 48mm seals around the fork, 2 of them. And that stiction is why it's very difficult to measure and set up front fork sag. But when you find, if you go and press on your bike in the garage when it's cold, it will. I always do it with the front brake on. Like, oh, that feels real hard. But you know, you could say that's somewhat going up and down together. But if you've ridden this and you come back and you then thought, oh, I'll have a see what, because I do. I'll have a see and see what it feels like, and it's like so much plusher, so much better. And that's because it's all warmed up and the seals haven't got so much drag and everything else. And also with sag of a bike, if you're taller, it's not just the weight of a person as well, it's actually the leverage they have over a motorcycle. So with my long arms and legs, I can get back like about here, right? When you've got someone a lot taller, the leverage they have to throw their weight back, right, will have a bigger squatting, a bigger effect on how much weight transfer gets transferred through a bike, and that can have an effect on how much sag and everything else you set up for someone. I can't squat that back of that bike with. I would squat the back of that bike more if my weight was there instead of here. But
that's
I can't get there.
It's often why when you watch videos of these pro riders, they're not 5'5" like me, they're 6' plus riders. They can get feet on the floor with still room, and they can put their ass right over the bike. When they're doing pivot turns and lifting the front up, it looks really easy because they can shift their whole body weight back, which lightens the front end. It makes a huge difference as a rider.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes a difference is the handlebars.
Yeah, you should. Your ideal starting point is to try and have your handlebars somewhat in line with your forks. That way, you're not. If they're ahead of the forks, it can get jittery on the steering. If they're behind, it can be a little bit lazy. So they say for it to be somewhat in line. They put these very low. There's not a lot of height to these bars on the modern bikes because the guys that race them, there's more control and that through lower bars. So they say.
Keep their elbows higher.
Eh?
Keep their elbows higher.
Yeah. I think as well for your suspension. Last of all, really, for your suspension to work right, you've got to as well be in a neutral position, ideally. You know, you want to be where you can let go of the handlebars. I'm moving there, and you're in a neutral position. If you're riding like this, your suspension's going to feel rubbish. If you're sitting here, you're going to feel like your bike can't turn. You know, it comes from underneath the pegs. That's where you want to be sitting. So easy to just sit down. When you sit down behind the pegs. So our body is, we've got more suspension in our body than what that bike's got to give us. I think that's it, unless people have got any questions.
Yeah, are you doing this with a full tank of petrol or not?
That's a good point. I mean, they don't cover that much. You could argue, well, why not put half a tank in then, and you've got the happy medium between the two. I haven't seen many articles. Jake?
The way I say that to people when they ask that question is, did you have a shit?
Oh, sorry, Dad.
I'd say when you're doing your initial adjustments, anything less than a 10% change is hardly noticeable. Certainly if you go to 20%, you'll really notice a change. So when you're doing your initial setup, then probably somewhere between 10 and 15% is where you're going to start noticing the difference of positive or negative. And that's where you start. Then you do your final adjustments later. Yeah.
Okay.
Which goes back to your kind of 5 clicks at a time. Really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we said, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Alex needs to run it in first, doesn't he, really? He needs to
Yeah.
go out and do
Yeah, and he's
20
padding
hours
in,
on it.
doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
We do that. Then do it for somebody for a week.
But get that balance right with the preload on the back and your forks up and down. You know, get that, and then your clickers are fine adjusting the feel from that.
Sean, the initial comfort settings, and that'd be in your manual. If you're second hand,
Be in your manual. But again, it's just a starting point. It doesn't mean, because they've said comfort there, it doesn't mean that that's going to feel comfortable. Not at all. You know, if you think it feels hard, compression, loosen it up. You know, and even then, if you've got it loosened up quite a bit and you still think still feels hard, try reducing a bit of rebound, loosening that up, letting the thing move. It could be that the back's a bit too stiff and up and overpowering the front a bit and causing a problem on the front. There's a lot of variables, but you got to kind of, you know, that's why I alter quite a bit with mine to try and find out.
Important, isn't it, Sean, if you're going to start making those adjustments, to be certain that your forks in your shop have been recently well serviced.
Yeah.
If it's not a new bike. Otherwise, you're making adjustments on worn out oil, worn out seals, everything else, and that's not going to be the same as when it's been fresh.
Yeah, you'll do all that work, won't you, in trying to get it, and then when you do have it serviced, it'll just be way off.
Yeah.
And everyone's different as well. I could set a bike up how I like it, and someone else will get on and say I don't like it like that. It's a real personal thing as well.
My experience with a brand new Husky is starting off on the comfort setting and just going softer.
You have, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. What was me and you, Tony? We were saying, weren't we? Tony's good at watching and seeing how a bike works and everything. And Tony's got a lot of experience in riding and racing and everything else. And, you know, we were talking the other day and we both agree that for what we do, just having that back, just a little bit of extra sag, more often than not, does help let the bike settle, running softer. You know, Tony and I always struggle with a bike being soft enough because I'm light. But Tony was saying, like, he puts it nearly fully soft and then starts coming back in to where you're making it a little bit stiffer to try and get that, rather than like all the you know, when you watch videos on how to set a bike up, it's very, very rare that is for trail riding. It's to set a bike up for motocross or enduro, some form of racing. That's not what we do. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Well, that's fast. So all got something to think about there. So go and get your screwdrivers out and start tweaking, I think, is the answer there. So we're about wrap it up there, really. I think what we're